Hi everyone, this is Arpad from StarPath Academy, and today I am continuing with trying to answer some of my members' questions on Patreon and buymeacoffee.com. So link to both of those memberships under the video if you're interested, and I really do appreciate my members. Okay, so a member asks, how does bank bail-in work? Do they take cash from every account, or do they rip off people with large balances? Right, so it can go both ways. I mean, that's the simple answer. So if you take a look at Cyprus, it was, I believe only certain accounts above certain balance. I think that is much more likely. So all of these are tools available for governments and banking systems, and you really have to ask what is the goal that they are trying to achieve, and based on that you can deduct what will happen or what might happen or what is more likely to happen. So in case of these small countries, it was very different, right? In Romania's case, it was very different as well. They can just lock your amounts in the banking system and let it depreciate and lose its total purchasing power. So they don't even have to bail it in. They just lock it in through a very high inflationary time, right? In Lebanon, it was also a bit different, where it got forced into local currency based on a previous currency exchange rate. So it really depends on what they want to achieve. I mean, my best guess is that every system, its first and most worry or goal is to survive. So based on that, you could imagine that they would not bail in below certain amounts. However, I don't know if you want to bet on that by itself. I think that's the case in the United States. We are going through a managed fall. Yeah. So it's a bit different. In the United States, you have seen the politics of appeasement a couple of years ago, and the politics of division in the last few years. So you can guess that they would not bail in every account, because that is, they can print the money, so they don't have to bail in, but they might want to bail in just to have some diversions, right? Or divisiveness between the populace, because that always helps the upper classes. So my guess is that they would not bail in only after certain amounts. They would not bail in lower than, and let's not give a number, some amounts. That is my guess, right? So the question continues, if one takes cash out of the banks before the bail-in, approximately how long before new cash is issued, and does this make the old cash completely worthless in a matter of months? That is the case, or that was the case in Venezuela. Whenever a new currency is issued, you only have very limited time to turn that in. But also remember, this is again a tool of the bankers and governments to achieve a goal. So their goal might be very different than the goal that was in a managed collapse, which was in Romania during the 90s. So the managed collapse after the Soviet Union collapse. So their cash had value for a long time, even the old cash, and at some point the old currency and the new currency could be used interchangeably for quite some period of time, and that was a different reason than in Venezuela. So all of these are tools, and you have to guess what the powers that be and governments want to achieve, and based on that think about what are the outcomes. So I think going down the route of what exactly will happen and why, like some YouTube videos do, I think that's a fool's errand. It doesn't make any sense. What you really have to prepare is all of the above and diversify for any situation. In that case, you can act in both cases. So, I'm not a big fan of leaving a lot of cash anywhere. I would rather invest it in something and own some assets during high inflationary periods, and then producing assets during hyperinflation. You do want to have, well, not investment advice, but I do want to have cash for deflationary effects or deflationary periods where it's really the harvesting time of bankers. That's when they harvest the actual assets that you have purchased with leverage and you're unable to pay. That's how they harvest it in. It's all a game, really. And those who print and own the currency can do anything what they want with it. And I think the best goal is to not participate in the games if you can, or participate in the games. However, know when a certain move happens, how to sidestep that immediately. And you will only learn that if you subscribe to the channel and listen to it for a long time. And I'm learning it as well, but it always changes. You just have to be smart about it. Does anyone have a strategy that will allow my family to maintain a decent standard of living without preying upon the unprepared? Yes, well, of course, try not to be part of the system as much as possible. So try to deal outside of the system, try to barter as much as possible, have assets, have producing assets, ideally farms and land that you can lend to others during crisis times, that they can help you help others, right? So yes, there's a lot of stress and a lot of suffering going into a hyperinflation, and a lot of people are making money by trying to purchase assets off of families that are under stress or in distress. That is how the elite preserve their power during these times, right? The ones who actually print their new currency can purchase out your stuff during these times, because in hyperinflation, a lot of things go up, but nothing goes as fast as basic necessities. So just by you trying to acquire basic necessities, you might be forced to sell off some other assets that you have worked all your life, to maintain or acquire. So the numbers are really just there to confuse you. I told this before, you should not look at hyperinflation charts in local currencies and try to understand them based on the currency, because it's just madness. It's just a number. What you should, if you can, try to find charts during hyperinflations that are comparing stuff against stuff, not stuff against currencies, because that doesn't make any sense. Like, yes, real estate went up X 1000%, but what does that mean? How many 1000% did food go up, and how many people had to sell their properties at X 1000%, which was actually a couple of weeks worth of food, right? So, be of value to your community during these times. Prepare beforehand, and make the best of the situation with as many people as you can. And it's quite easy to do that, because a lot of good people will be flocking towards other good people to find solution during these times. However, also understand that you, by not buying up stuff during hyperinflation, by default, you're letting the price of it fall further. And those who are using these events specifically for notorious reasons, you're actually just helping them. So taking advantage is a very relative term, because if someone is selling something because they need food or something like that, then if you can provide food for them, that's great. But if you cannot, right, what can you do, right? So you have to reevaluate what is helping others, right? What does that mean? Basically, because you won't be able to help the whole country, right? Because the belief system that is the country is falling during hyperinflation. And the currency that was printed by the country or by the empire is also falling, right? You cannot help everyone, but there's only so many good people that produce value. You can only help them, I guess, by having or showing good examples. Okay, another question. It appears that precious metals have little or no value during inflation, hyperinflation, except to preserve wealth until the crisis is over. And this can be 10 years or more. Yes, that's pretty much so in my experience. So, I mean, that is the value. I wouldn't say little or no value. That is the exact value that you want to keep it for, is to carry you over these times, and you don't necessarily want to spend it during the times. So if you take a look at my video called Gold During Hyperinflation, I believe, there I try to explain what usually happens, or what happened in our case in Romania. So basically, gold will, or most likely will be, one of the very last things that shoots up in price after everything else has shot up, and that will also pull silver with it. But basically, once everyone else has flocked into everything else, which is more aligned with the mainstream belief systems, but after at some point they will lose the connection between the fake media and themselves, or I guess the fake media and reality kind of shows itself. At that point, it will be easy to see that nothing is coming back anymore. So it's not just a spike, or it's not just supply chain issue, but it's rampant high inflation and hyperinflation. Possibly at that point, anything goes. And at that point, very few things that are in the real world have such a value density as gold, so they will flock to it. So at that point, if you want, you could sell your gold at that point, right? When it shoots up in price, because it might come down, the spike might come back a little bit. Then if during hyperinflation happens, it will go underground, and it will be very difficult to deal with it and very dangerous, right? And afterwards, it will just reevaluate itself in the new world, right? So I don't want to make huge predictions here, but there are two good opportunities to sell gold. One is prior hyperinflation, but at that point, you really have to ask the question, what are you going to buy? Because if it's not a food producing asset, then it might not be worth it to sell, because compared to other stuff, it might not go up in value as much, right? Then during high inflation or hyperinflationary periods, you could use as barter, but that has its own issues. And then afterwards, while it's still up, you can sell it for other stuff that have depreciated during hyperinflation compared to other stuff, not compared to the currency. So that, in my opinion, that's why I say it is a multi-generational wealth preserving tool. And you have to use it what it's best at doing, right? That's my experience anyway. Okay, so he says, I'm spending a huge amount of time trying to understand all this financial intricacy in an effort to preserve capital and have working capital available. And I would prefer to be able to focus on other issues that will become critical, for example, food, energy, water, community. I mean, there's not much to understand, because it's quite simple. It's the end of a cycle, and everything that was defined in the previous cycle will become worthless during the redefinition of the new cycle, new currency cycle, and everything will get a new definition. And at that point, you can take a look at that. And during these cycle changes, very basic stuff will be very important. And that's how you help people, by being able to provide those things for them. So yes, I agree. Absolutely. You should focus on food, energy, water, and community. Everything else is just sort of a means to that, I would say. Right. Wealth preservation is, the problem is that most of the people don't have plans for 5 years, 10 years, 50 years. You just follow the plans that were laid out for you, and those plans might not align with your value system. Another interesting question. What appears to be a mold layer is growing on the sauerkraut that I started. Should I remove it when it grows back? I'm on the right track, or I have already contaminated the sauerkraut? I mean, if it's on the sauerkraut, if it's on the actual cabbage, throw the whole damn thing out. If it's on top of layer of the water, then it's a different situation. Your sauerkraut should always be underwater. That's the whole point of it. It's an anaerobe fermentation. Anything that has mold on it right now, I would throw it out, but during a crisis, I might have to reconsider. So, use it as a learning experience. I'm not a sauerkraut expert, but yeah, anything with mold, other than salami that you can actually grow mold on the outside of it, well, that should be penicillin mold, that you can do, and it actually helps preserve the dried salami. Other than that, I would throw everything out if it has mold on it. But you know, the food and the water is different when it comes to sauerkraut. So do some more research, I guess, and let me know as well what you did with that. What stocks do well during inflation and hyperinflation? I mean, this could be a 2-hour long video. Probably would need some guests as well to put some questions, but hyperinflation, the short answer is nothing goes well during hyperinflation. There are no stocks that do well, because hyperinflation is a fail of the currency, which is actually a fail of the belief system in the currency, which sometimes couples a fail in the belief system of the country. So everything is just a promise, and a promise on a promise. You almost never have, stocks in the sense that you actually get the paper stock. Technically, if you look into it, you don't own any stocks, even if you think you own them. I'm not going to go into that, but I'm sure some really honest and smart commenters under the video will let you know how stocks are traded. So nothing does well during hyperinflation, in my opinion, compared to other stuff. Compared to currency, it will do tremendously good, but it might buy you a loaf of bread. So watch out for that. During high inflation, it's a completely different question. We would have to spend a lot of time on that. But just because an underlying asset is doing well, that doesn't mean that the stock will do well as well. Because let's say aluminum is going up in price and you think, okay, that's perfect, that's good. But the company that is producing aluminum, actually, if you know more about aluminum, how it's being produced, it's the raw material that aluminum is produced out of is again very different, bauxite and so on. So mining companies tend to do well, but it's not always easy and it's not always one-to-one comparison, because it might have trouble selling that to the next company down the line, because chains break during high inflationary periods, that you can now see. I wish I started these videos earlier. So you have to look at the individual companies and how well protected they are from the breakage of the chain. Right. The same goes with food and everything else. Yeah. I mean, yeah, we'll do a member video about that, but it needs to be a long video. And I'm not doing stock picks, but I can do general ideas. Alright, that's it for this video. Thanks and subscribe.